Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 2nd of October 2019, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish. Well, Brexit, Burger King. Are we going to leave the Burger King is the question.
Who knows? But Boris, of course, is at the Tory party conference today and announcing his final offer. This is my final offer, he says. This is the compromise plan that he's proposing to the European Union. And he's hoping that the EU will understand that this is a compromise plan and that they will compromise in return. The European Commission said they're going to examine the proposals objectively. The Irish government, they've rejected the proposals even though they haven't actually been published yet. And that's on the basis of a leak by the Daily Telegraph, which seems to be saying that the proposal involves introducing two borders. So one border isn't enough now, Brian. We've got to have two borders. So there's going to be customs checks at the Northern Irish border, rather inside the Northern Irish border, to make sure that the border itself isn't closed. So the border will be closed because the customs post will be inside the border. And then there's going to be another, what they're describing as a regulatory border in the Irish Sea. That won't be a customs border, so that keeps the DUP happy. Won't be a customs border, it'll be a regulatory border.
Will the one at sea be a painted line?
Well, that's a good question.
A red line?
A red line, yes, a very good question. So that's the according to the Telegraph anyway, the deal that's on the table. Now the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, they're very happy with this, they say, which is hardly surprising because the government has announced today another £163 million bung to Northern Ireland. So there you go. The UK government has today announced £163 million to support growth in Northern Ireland. So that's on top of the £1 billion bung that the Tory party gave Northern Ireland in order to get their support in the House of Commons anyway.
I jotted the word bung down next to that particular one, Mike. I didn't know that you were going to use the same term, but of course bung gets very close to corruption, doesn't it? And we'll come on to that a little bit later in the news.
Absolutely. Well, this is what Simon Coveney, the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland, had to say. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, we'll study any proposal carefully, but if the reports are true, it doesn't look like the basis of an agreement. So that's good. In the meantime, Boris, what's he been up to? He's done something else here. He said that he questions the legitimacy of the Surrender Act. Now, the question on everybody's mind was, what was he going to do about this piece of legislation, which is going to force him that if he doesn't succeed in getting this deal passed with the EU, that's going to force him to extend Article 50, or at least attempt to extend Article 50 to the 31st of January. And as we were mentioning on Friday's programme, he's trying to preempt that by basically going around all the EU leaders and saying, look, you don't really want us to extend any further. We don't want to extend any further. So when I write this letter, just refuse. So he's trying to encourage them to do that. But he's now, according to various media reports, questioning the constitutional legitimacy of the Surrender Act. And there is some speculation that he's going to try to take this to court. We'll wait and see what happens there. But in the meantime, it gets better because here is a report published today by the British Medical Journal. If you have to do a search for Brexit on the BMJ website, you will find that case report October 2019, acute transient psychotic disorder precipitated by Brexit vote. This is apparently the first case of psychosis which is directly attributable to Brexit. You'll be glad to know that. This is the report itself. You can download it from that page. So the British Medical Journal saying that an unnamed man in his 40s was taken to hospital by paramedics shortly after the referendum result was out because his mental health deteriorated rapidly. And they quote Dr. Mohammed Zia-ul-Haq Kachu, who's a specialist, and he treated this man. This doctor is an associate professor at Nottingham University's Institute for Mental Health, and he wrote in the article here in this report on the BMJ website that since the EU referendum results were declared on the 24th of June 2016, the man concerned has started spending more time putting his thoughts across on social media. So anybody that's, the clear implication of this is that, anybody that tries to put their thoughts across about Brexit on social media is mentally ill. And it goes on, he found it difficult to reconcile with political events happening around him. He became increasingly worried about racial incidents. His sleep deteriorated. He was then admitted to a psychiatric ward for a couple of weeks, where he attempted to, according to this report, burrow his way through the hospital floor with his hands to get the hell out of this place. So anyway, the report there says that he recovered completely within 2 weeks after a brief admission and treatment with olanzapine. He had experienced a similar episode. Here we get to it. He had experienced a similar episode of much less severity 13 years previously after major work-related stress, which resolved completely within a few days. He was experiencing stress related to work and family prior to the current episode, which could potentially have been a contributory factor, but this is only secondary.
So we're now using the medical system in order to get a political ideology across. It did say at the end of the little paragraph on screen there that political events can act as major psychological stressors. Well,
Absolutely.
Of course, that's absolutely true. If you know that as a result of the government, you're going to lose your job or lose your loved one in a nursing home, or you're going to have your children dying of government-imposed vaccines, you're going to get stressed. So is that article clean? Has it been written with people's best health interests in mind, or is that a political scam?
I think it's the latter. Anyway, on Friday, David Scott mentioned the creation of a petition on the UK government petition, or the parliamentary petition website, to try and get enough signatures to force a debate on a general election. Well, I received this morning because I was one of the initial 5 people that supported that petition. And it said, "Dear Mike Robinson, we reject the petition you supported. We, the people, demand a general election. There's already a petition about this issue. We cannot accept a new petition when we already have one about a very similar issue. You're more likely to get action on this issue if you sign and share a single petition." So, okay, fair enough. But they provide a link to the petition that they claim is the one which is the primary petition, and any other petitions are going to be rejected in favour of this one. So we thought we would have a look at that one, and here it is. Force a national general election. Well, at first glance that looks good, but then you read the text and it says, since the EU referendum 23rd of June 2016, in fact it was 24th, but anyway, that's neither here nor there, the Conservative Unionist Party has not followed the decisions of the British public. They have lost credibility to run a country. With the revelations about cocaine and policies that could plunge this country into a spiral of fiery destruction, we need a general election. So frankly, this is the petition that the Petitions Committee has decided is the one that needs to run with respect to a general election. Is anybody going to sign that that's pro-Brexit? I don't think so. Is anybody going to sign that that's thinking straight? I don't think so either.
The structure, the wording and structure of that one, Mike, I could believe, if I wanted to be a little bit conspiratorial, I could believe that petition had been created in order to block what we need 100,000 people asking for a general election. Now, maybe that's just wishful thinking, but quite incredible that you put up something like that and that blocks a simple call for a general election.
Well, I can assure everybody that the language used in the petition that we were supporting was nothing similar to that. But who is responsible for this? Well, of course, it is the Petitions Committee, which is a select committee of the House of Commons. And here are the list of people that are on that. We've got Labour, Scottish National Party, Tory members on there. I'm not sure what side of the Brexit discussion they fall on at this point. And I'm not sure what involvement they directly had. I'm sure this decision was probably made by a civil servant. But it is a little...
Interesting. It's
yes,
interesting, Mike,
yes,
that you
indeed.
can't call for a general election.
Absolutely. Now, If you like what the UK Column does and you would like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community. There are options there for how you can do that. We do need your financial support. So if you can do that, please do. And a quick reminder, once again, that Ian R. Crane is asking if 5G is safe. And he continues his tour of the UK. This is the 2nd of October. So tonight he is in Leeds. Tomorrow he's in Manchester. Friday he's in Edinburgh. And then next week it's Glasgow, Belfast, Swansea and Cardiff to round the thing off. So it finishes on Friday the 11th of October. Massively impressive that he's heading around the country at this kind of pace to present this.
Yeah, it's really excellent, and of course he did this with fracking and it produced very good results, so we'll see what happens on this one.
Absolutely. Now, Russiagate, and I wanted to draw people's attention to this. It's on Fox News, and it's on Fox News because Lindsey Graham was appearing on Hannity's Fox News programme Monday night, and he was talking about an article that the New York Times had published, which they leak another telephone call, this time Donald Trump's call to the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison. Well, Lindsey Graham said that the article was the beginning of an effort to close down the Attorney General William Barr's investigation to find out how the Russiagate situation occurred. He said that William Barr needs to be talking to Australia. He needs to be talking to Italy. He needs to be talking to the UK to find out if the intelligence services of those countries worked with US intelligence services improperly to open up this operation against Donald Trump, the whole Russiagate thing. He said that if William Barr isn't doing that, then he's not doing his job. And he said, so I'm going to write a letter to all three countries asking them to cooperate with Barr. He said, if you're worried about foreign people being involved in our election, you ought to be worried about Christopher Steele being hired by the Democratic Party. Does the whistleblower, this is the whistleblower over the Biden affair that we talked about last week, does the whistleblower have any connections to the intelligence community, the old intelligence community that was corrupt as hell, Brennan and Clapper? I'm hoping and praying that somebody will look at the way the counterintelligence investigation against the Trump campaign began. Was it based on evidence that Papadopoulos was working with the Russians, or is it based on stuff coming from countries friendly to us? So this is really the first time that we've seen mainstream politics in the States, mainstream media covering the fact, in fact, that of course Christopher Steele, so-called ex-British MI6, that he wrote the report which started the whole Russiagate thing off, and really has paralysed US politics for the last 3 years.
Yeah, so we could say the British government has done that.
I think it's probably not unfair to say that, indeed. Sticking with foreign news, here's Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, his pre-trial hearing begins today. I was fascinated to discover in this BICOM article, Brian, that Benjamin Netanyahu will be represented by 10 lawyers. So there's clearly so much fraud and corruption going on here that he needs 10 lawyers to defend him.
Yeah, I just find it astonishing that this is the man and his team that UK has teamed up with for joint initiatives on security intelligence services, GCHQ.
Yes.
And it doesn't appear quite as clean as we're told.
No, so Netanyahu is charged with bribery, fraud and breach of trust and accused of securing regulatory concessions to Shaul Elovich, the controlling shareholder of Bezeq Telecommunications, in exchange for favourable news reports in the Walla News website, which is also owned by Elovich. Netanyahu is suspected of taking bribes and acting in a conflict of interest, including Bezeq's merger with satellite TV company Yes, that he presided over as communications minister. So we'll watch that one with interest.
Great interest. Well, I don't think we can rely on our security services, and let's stick on the subject of Extinction Rebellion. And we're going to say to our viewers and listeners today that we'd like your help on this one, because it's clear that something very strange is going on. On the screen, we're just putting up the government's preventing extremism in the education and children's services sectors. So here's the government legislation. It's saying that Like other public bodies, schools and childcare providers have a legal duty to have due regard to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism. So this is pretty clear cut, very clear cut in fact, and the government is saying, well, we need to protect our children, make sure they're not going to be radicalised or drawn into extremism. But if we mention Extinction Rebellion, it suddenly goes very quiet. Now, we've had a number of telephone calls with the Department of Education. We've spoken to the Countering Extremism Division within the Department of Education, and they do not want to acknowledge the fact that Extinction Rebellion has openly called for both adults and children to break the law. And of course, Extinction Rebellion is grooming and coercing children to come out of school. That's a criminal offence in itself.
But if we just talk about the criminal activity, the proposal that their encouragement of criminal activity, you could argue that this is radicalisation. Indeed.
Well, I believe it is. And very small text here, but if you freeze the frame and you're watching, you can obviously have a look at part of the text of the email that we've sent through to the counter-extremism unit at Education, the government's Department of Education. And the nub of this is that there is plenty of written evidence saying that Extinction Rebellion is a dangerous extremist and subversive organisation. Some of the best analysis has come from former SO15, that's the counter-terrorism part linked with the Met Police. It's grooming children to break the law. It's pulling children out of school. So we've been asking the Department of Education and the Counter-Extremism Unit what their policy is on Extinction Rebellion as a dangerous subversive organisation. And it's quite remarkable, Mike, because of course the response we've had to date is a fob off in one simple email where they talked climate change instead of the dangers of Extinction Rebellion. And now we've gone directly to the Counter-Extremism Unit itself. There's a wall of silence. So we're going to keep reporting on this, and we'll keep reporting our experiences of getting an answer from the government's Prevent and Counter-Extremism Unit. But our conclusion at the moment is silence can only mean that the British government condones an organisation called Extinction Rebellion, which is openly calling for adults and children to break the law. So why, Mike, why might the British government be keen to promote an organisation that's calling for people to break the law? Why do you think that could be?
Well, I think in this case, of course, this is climate change related. There is plenty of political policy to be gained from the climate change agenda. And anything which encourages people to think in that way is doing the government some good in their minds.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll see how it follows through. If you've got children and those children are of school age, you should be extremely interested in what we're reporting on this. And we're going to continue to report the reaction of the British government, whether that's silence or we do indeed get some indication of what their policy is on Extinction Rebellion.
Well, we're going to break a rule of UK Column News here about having Z-list celebrities on screen. But I wanted to highlight this article on BBC News today. It's in other media as well. Meghan sues Mail on Sunday over private letter. This is Meghan Markle, the so-called Duchess of Sussex. And the BBC saying that she has begun legal action against the Mail on Sunday over a claim that it unlawfully published one of her private letters. In a statement, the Duke of Sussex said that he and Meghan were forced to take action against relentless propaganda. Prince Harry said, "I lost my mother and now I watch my wife falling victim to the same powerful forces." Well, I find this extremely fascinating because, of course, Meghan Markle, since she married Prince Harry, has done nothing but promote herself on every media platform that she possibly can. She's got an entire team of people to promote her on every media platform going. And so for anybody to be comparing or to be suggesting that she's falling victim to the same powerful forces that Prince Harry claims attacked his mother, is delusional. So my question is, what is this really all about? I mean, if we look at the Daily Mail today, if anybody goes to the Daily Mail website today, half the stories on there are about this girl. So what's this about? I suspect what it's really about is this. This is about the royal family attacking the Mail in particular, because the Mail has been carrying a lot of content about Prince Andrew and his relationship to Epstein over the last few weeks. So this is today's episode. Prince Andrew keeps a low profile and refuses to answer questions as his trip to Perth is overshadowed by the Epstein scandal. And they say that Prince Andrew checked into the Como, the Treasury, after landing in Perth on Monday for a series of meetings. The top-rated hotel boasts views of the Swan River. That's exciting. He is likely staying in the 120 square meter Como suite that costs up to $1,500 a night. And the Duke of York kept a low profile amid scrutiny of his links to Epstein, refusing to answer questions at an event. So the pressure is being maintained on Prince Andrew, but of course the royal family can't attack back on the media on Prince Andrew's behalf, because that would be perceived very negatively from a PR standpoint. So I believe that Meghan and Harry have been rolled out to try to lead the charge.
Diversionary argument.
Absolutely.
Right, well, switch back to politics, and we must come over to the Lib Dem party from a few days ago when, of course, Guy Verhofstadt had made his amazing speech saying that it was the end of nation states and that Great Britain, the United Kingdom, could only survive by holding hands with the European Union. And that produced a lot of applause from the Lib Dem audience of the conference. Well, the backlash on social media, at least, has been very interesting and pretty hard-hitting. So this one says bollocks to democracy with a Lib Dem background. We've got Liberal and Democrats simply crossed through on another one here. Then, of course, we've had people likening Guy Verhofstadt's delivery of his speech, his manner, and particularly the use of his hands with speeches by Hitler. So this one's very measured. It said, I saw this, I think it's the earliest recorded of Hitler's speeches on film, at least, the first film one. He says, I found it a bit similar to you, Guy. And of course, that ultimately led through to people really taking the mickey with a bit of black humour. So here's the vote Liberal Democrats with a rather austere background. But it gets a little bit more interesting, because the last couple of days, The Sun has been having a look at Joe Swinson's husband, Duncan Hames. Not saying he's doing anything wrong, but they're asking a few questions about organisations that he's involved with. And the key one is an organisation called Transparency International UK, where he's Director of Policy. So it says, it describes him as fighting corruption by day, studying internal audit reports by night. He leads the policy advocacy and research teams of Transparency International UK, quote, the British chapter of the worldwide anti-corruption movement. So I'm surprised we could have the British government offering bungs to the Irish government in order to get policy through, because presumably Mr. Hames would be on the case with Transparency International. But what is this thing he's involved in? Well, of course, The Sun doesn't get into the detail. Here it is, a pretty interesting icon of the eye image, but their vision is a world in which government, politics, businesses, civil society and the daily lives of people are completely free of corruption. This is a pretty bold initiative, Mike. I'm sure they're well on the way to achieving it. The world is clearly getting corruption free. And this is where it gets spooky, because what have they done? They've set up chapters, a global network of chapters, and an international secretariat, a board of directors, individual members, an advisory council, and they're all working to make sure that every government and business around the globe is corruption free. So we take a look at some of the people. Now, we're not saying anybody here is doing anything wrong. We're simply saying, what are these people doing? So this is the British representative, Robert Barrington. executive director, and what's his sort of interest? Well, he's got some here: non-remunerated affiliation advisory board, RUSI, which I thought was interesting. Centre for Financial Crime Studies with RUSI's, Lord Mayor's Trust Advisory Group, the London Corporate Governance Committee. Don't know what that is, but it sounds fascinating. And then we can see a bit further down that he's an unpaid advisor, Ministry of Justice Experts Group on the Bribery Act UK Export Guarantees Advisory Council. So quite deep stuff. If we get in a bit more, it gets better. We've got a Peter Eigen here, chairman of the Advisory Council, and he's founder and former chair of Transparency International. And so we had a look at him. And what we find with many of these people is we've got banking experience, and we're into the World Bank, we're into all the major banks. And those people, or these people, are then receiving some interesting money. So this is part of their finances. 3.5 million coming in from DFID. So straight in from the UK government is handing them 3.5 million. I'm going to say I think that the UK government must be one of the most corrupt governments on the planet. It hides under a veneer of respectability, and it pumps in 3.5 million of public money to an organisation which claims it's clearing the world of corruption. But look at number 2, the European Commission has put in nearly 3.5 million. So what the Sun is saying, and people who are commenting on the article, isn't it interesting that even when we're looking at the Lib Dem party, we've got to say close family links through to European money. We've shown in the last couple of days corruption in the European Union. We were talking about Neil Kinnock and his failure to clean up corruption in the European Union. But here's the European Commission pumping money through.
Of course, that would explain why Jo Swinson is so keen not to leave.
Well, maybe it does explain why she's keen not to leave, Mike. This is where the public needs to know what's really happening. And of course, nobody apart from free media like the UK column is investigating these sorts of things. But also we've got the big global accountancy firms like Ernst & Young are part of this organisation. But we know not necessarily Ernst & Young, of course, but many of the other big companies have themselves been involved in corruption. Arthur Andersen comes to my mind. And down at the bottom, what have we got? Well, we've got George Soros putting in nearly 500,000. So he was involved with messing around with Britain's money, Black Friday, which you could say, well, was insider dealing possibly, but I don't know. But more money going in here. And then if we look and see who they're working with, it's everybody. The Council of Europe, Climate Investment Funds, the European Commission, the European Parliament, the UN, and we'll be doing more on the UN in a minute because this is policy, but on it goes, even into G8, G20, International Civil Society Centre, back to George Soros, I believe, and then through this one, including Crown agents. So we'll leave it there, but we'll say we're fascinated to see these links, and if anybody can help us explain what exactly Transparency International is really doing, we'd be very grateful for the help.
Now, NATO. This is General Andrew Lanata in the centre there. He's NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Transformation, and today he's hosting a discussion by the members of the North Atlantic Council and the NATO Military Committee, and also NATO civilian and military leaders on the impact of disruptive technologies on our future security. So Jens Stoltenberg is speaking at the event, and he said that today emerging and disruptive technologies are having a profound impact on how the alliance carries out its core tasks. How we understand, adopt and implement those technologies will largely determine our future security, and NATO will play a key role in driving this change. So this meeting was taking place in Belgium, and it's part of NATO's efforts to take advantage of data science, machine learning, other technologies to improve their decision making. So I've just found that quite fascinating because China at the moment, for example, is celebrating the 70th anniversary of its founding as its current iteration, and really some spectacular, well, you might call it disruptive technology in the sense that if it was to hit you, it would certainly disrupt you pretty spectacularly. But China is unveiling some pretty significant military hardware at that event, and they're talking about, this is Defence News talking about this, unmanned technologies including a large unmanned underwater vehicle, high-speed unmanned aircraft capable of supersonic flight, plus missiles. They're talking about a hypersonic drone, and so on. Some spectacular technology, and what's really interesting about this is how quickly it appears that China has managed to develop this stuff, at least as quickly as Russia, and certainly we've had no warning from NATO that this was coming down the pipe. No. So NATO's busy talking about disruptive technologies and their concerns about disinformation and so on. And in the meantime,
hard military
hardware in Russia and China has been developed that they are totally on their back foot with respect to, and it's pretty staggering that they have completely missed the boat on it seems.
Missed the boat, negligence, or to allow the balancing of world states in line with Guy Verhofstadt's no more nation states, it's all going to be empires. Well, if China is building that, this is the report from Plymouth Live. Long-awaited Royal Navy Carrier Task Group assembly is short-lived. A Royal Navy spokesperson said, "We've gone on about it for years. Here's the reality of the UK's 21st century strike group. One 65,000-ton carrier, HMS Queen Elizabeth, flanked by one state-of-the-art air defence destroyer, HMS Dragon, and one state-of-the-art submarine hunting frigate, HMS Northumberland, supported by one fleet tanker providing fuel for the ships and aircraft plus other supplies." And they then go on to say that I think it's the Type 45 HMS Dragon has had to leave the group. But this is a boast without any substance, Mike, because what this is not is not a carrier strike group. It's an aircraft carrier with a couple of ships acting as a safety escort, effectively. This is not a fighting group around the carrier, and it's an absolute lie to try and claim it is. But of course the carrier hasn't got aircraft anyway. It's got a few as a training exercise. So we're continuing to see the propaganda coming out from the Ministry of Defence about the state of UK's military. Why has the military been reduced to this pitiful position? Because of course it had to be pulled down in numbers and capability to balance in order to go for EU Defence Union. So I'm going to say propaganda from the Plymouth Live, or from the Ministry of Defence, at least on that one. Now, what has the Navy been doing? Well, the Navy's apparently been very big on helping with immigrants, and we've seen that with EU forces in the Mediterranean. But this is the story we said we wanted to report. Politicians call for Wales to be transformed into the world's first migrant sanctuary country, is what they're talking about. Politicians, as the tweet says, want to turn Wales into a nation of sanctuary for refugees. Now, the report on screen is from 2017, and people might have thought, well, this was just a smokescreen, a puff in the wind, and it's all gone. But no, because here's the document, January 2019, Nation of Sanctuary, Refugee and Asylum Seeker Plan. And this is the lady, Jane Hutt, the Deputy Minister and Chief Whip, who's in the document pushing it forward. She's saying that refugees and asylum seekers often arrive in Wales following traumatic experiences in their countries of origin and on their journeys to the UK. We want to ensure that these individuals are supported to rebuild their lives and make a full contribution to the Welsh society. So Wales is opening its borders to refugees, many of whom will of course be refugees either because of wars started with the munitions from the British government in the first place, or as a result of economic policy by the European Union. She doesn't mention any of that. She simply says that this is what's been decided. So let's look at this detail. I'm grateful to the Equality, Local Government and Communities Committee for their recommendations, the 120 refugees and asylum seekers who volunteered their time to Welsh Government officials, the Wales Strategic Migration Partnership and Welsh Local Government Association, the Welsh Refugee Coalition and other stakeholders who have all helped to shape this plan, including the respondents who shared their views on the draft version during the consultation process. Little, if any, mention, Mike, of the Welsh people themselves. We're into this participatory democracy where it's the charities and the think tanks and the non-government organisations who've come up with this. But where, of course, has this plan come from? Well, we're talking the UN. And here's another lady featured in the report, Rosella Pagliucci-Law. To ensure that it can be realised, Wales' ambition to become a nation of sanctuary deserves the active support of all local authorities, civil society, citizens, businesses and the UK government. In offering UNHCR's full backing, I would like to encourage all of these partners to join this commendable effort and to be part of its success. So essentially, this is UN policy, which is coming straight into the rule book, the statute book, no debate through the Welsh people themselves, simply implemented as a result of dialogue. And if you follow that lady through, you can see her on the left of your screen here. I had a look at who she was speaking alongside at this event, which is listed by Bond. The event was called Strengthening Fragile States. And I had a look at this lady, Jenny is her surname there. And let's have a look at this. She's the director heading the UK's Joint Funds Unit, which oversees the delivery of the UK's Cross-Government Prosperity Fund and the Conflict, Security and Stability Fund. And if we get down a bit more, from 2011-16, she was Director for Security Policy and Conflict Prevention at the EU's External Action Service in Brussels, on secondment from the UK government. So this is fascinating because we've got a woman working for the UK government actually driving the EU policy, which is destabilising the Eastern European states and helping to promote the migrant movement itself. So an incestuous nest. Where does it end? Well, it ends with this group here, Women in International Security Services. This is the Brussels-based branch. And I've tweeted this out because when I look at the faces of these young ladies, and I'm going to say mothers, I suspect that quite a few of them are mothers, they're being lured into the old boy defence network. And I'm sure they think they're part of it, but actually I think they're being used as glitter. So Wales is going to take more migrants, open borders. So where are those migrants going to go? Well, of course, they're going to come straight into England and Scotland or back into Ireland. But this is UN policy, not government policy.
It is something that we should note about this whole argument over Brexit and the backstop. And of course, one of the things that we know has been going on, and I know from direct experience that's going on, is that people who are convicted, who are immigrants in this country, convicted of criminal offences, are being deported from this country. They're going straight across to Ireland where they have no criminal record. They're not getting refused access in Ireland. And of course, there's no checks between the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland and the mainland of the UK. They're coming straight back into the UK. Vanessa and I, in discussions around this article that we highlighted on Monday's programme, wonder whether the reluctance to have any kind of border checks with Northern Ireland is because there is actually a channel there for people being brought into the country, trafficked into the country.
The unlawful migration is much bigger than we're being told. They don't want any border checks or controls because they want that avenue to remain open, because that is one of the key means by which conditions in this country are being destabilised. And as we always say, if anybody is worried that that is we're commenting in a way derogatory to the immigrants. What we say is that it's clear that the immigrants are being callously used for this political policy. So that one is not going to hold much water. Dangerous stuff, though. We will follow up on that story, I think.
Now, reading the Plymouth Herald, Plymouth Live website today, we discovered that actually the UK column is at serious risk, Brian. And now, if you look out the window there, I don't know if you can get an estimate of how high above sea level we are, but say 50 meters or so. Well, we're apparently going to drown in our beds. So if you look outside the window there, there's Seaton's Tower, the lighthouse. This is the image that the Plymouth Herald was pushing out this morning with Seaton's Tower underwater. And the headline was the parts of Plymouth which could become completely underwater. So we're going to drown in this studio, Brian, imminently, according to the Herald.
Yes.
Except we're not, because if you read the article, you discover that it might take 5,000 years for that to be the case. But anyway, this was the most egregious piece of climate change propaganda I think I've seen in quite a long time.
And Plymouth Live has carried this while other newspapers and media outlets around the country have all suddenly also started speaking about the rise in sea levels and coastal areas being flooded. So this has been injected, and of course one of the areas that this policy is coming from, this false climate change policy, is the UN itself. And I think we'll have to do some more on that. But the good news is that the UK column is not going to be submerged for 5,000 years. Indeed. So it's not all bad. We'll leave it there. On Friday, we're going to do a special look at EU Defence Union because it's clearly hotting up. And it's clear that immense pressure is being put on anybody in the Westminster or in the House of Lords that's daring to stand up and warn about EU Defence Union. And that must tell us that the concerns are real. So join us on Friday for an in-depth look into EU Defence Union. That's it for today. Thank you. Bye-bye.